Professor X is one of the most respected leaders in the Marvel Universe, especially when it comes to mutant affairs. While many fans ship him with his long frenemy Magneto, the master of magnetism, the two never really shared a romantic relationship in the comics. Yet Xavier has been married multiple times and left behind a string of broken hearts, or had his broken. Sometimes it was politics, other times it was age gaps that didn't, well, age well outside of the 70s. From Emma Frost to Jean Grey, here's a look at the women who stole the heart of Charles Xavier. Yep, gross as it sounds, Jean is on the list, but we won't start with her. No, we'll start with a relationship that was retconned thanks to time travel, much like this love interest should have been. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, let's begin.
Charles, why didn't she recognize me? She knew me in this form.
Well, after you left me on...
Mystique. Charles Xavier. Wait, Mystique? Wasn't she like the professor's adopted sister? Gross. No, hold your horses. While the movies did make the two share a sibling-like bond, that isn't what happened in the comics. Hell, the two characters rarely crossed paths except to engage in battle, or so it seemed. Until Professor X left his heavenly abode and the X-Men got to know some of the secrets that lay under the telepath's mask. One being his wife, Raven Darkholme, aka the shape-shifting mutant Mystique. Now, this reveal came at a bad time. Not only was the professor dead, the mutants themselves were not on the best terms. And to add salt to the wound, Dazzler had just escaped Mystique's torture, vowing to kill the shapeshifter with her bare hands. While this was a huge shock to the X-Men, kind of like Magneto inheriting everything Xavier owned in X-Men 97, they did not get a chance to take it in. There were bigger secrets and a mutant that had been hidden away. This led to time travel, and the changes in the timeline made it so that this unholy union of Raven and Charles never came to pass. Now the two are enemies. Foes. Charles and time-traveling lovers are a thing, though. How? One name. Moira. Moira McTaggart. Brace yourself. This section contains spoilers for House of X. Still here? Let's get going. Wasn't it such a surprise when Moira McTaggart was revealed to be a mutant? And not just any mutant, but essentially a cat with 9 lives. Basically, Moira's mutation makes it so that every time she dies, she's reborn as Moira McTaggart, and she can do that for 10 or so lives. There's a lot more to it, so go read House of X if you haven't. For Charles Xavier though, Moira's 4th life was when he had this wonderful woman to himself. While in her current life too, and in other lives she's allied with Xavier or been against him, lives 4 and 5 were where the two were the closest. In Life 4, the two met and fell in love, establishing Xavier's school for gifted children. Everything went the way fans knew it would go, until a Sentinel attack ended that iteration of Moira, and we got number 5. There, she met Xavier a whole decade before their first meeting, and telepathically showed him all her lives. Instead of a school, the two ended with a protected mutant nation of Faraway. But that wasn't enough. A mutant genocide still took McTaggart's life. Ah, the agent and the professor. The movies showed their love again and again, including Xavier's misguided attempts to protect her. While we loved human Moira and how she went toe-to-toe with mutants, mutant Moira's backstory is something else, especially after she deliberately avoids falling in love with the man she married and had children with in her first life, even thus sacrificing her children, but is drawn to Xavier multiple times. Is it #soulmate, or is it just politics? We might not know that yet with Moira, but we do know what the answer is with another wife of Xavier's. Man, that dude sure gets around.
I have seen your face 1,000 times in my mind.
It's all
Magistrix Leandra. A princess and eventual queen from an extraterrestrial race, Magistrix Leandra sensed the X-Men when her planet was being taken over by her mad brother, who had pinned a fake accusation of attempt to usurp on her. Jean Grey used the Phoenix powers to defeat the crystal's magic that Leandra's brother was trying to unleash. Post this, Leandra and Charles were stuck on Earth, waiting for the Royal Council to see if Leandra could become the queen. While waiting, they fell in love and got married. Yet Charles had to eventually return to Earth to help the mutant population there. Despite the distance, the two continued to cross paths, and there was also a hint of love. In one such instance, Leandra mistook Charles for an entity attacking her people and hurt him, which annulled her marriage. In another, when she learned Charles was terribly sick, she took him to her planet to help him get cured. Was she the last lover of Charles Xavier? Given the multitude of timelines and universes in the Marvel Comics, and the amount of love Professor X holds, the answer is obviously no. Amelia Vaught. Amelia was a mutant with the ability to turn solid items into mist. As is often the case, the Vought family hated her mutant abilities, and so Amelia moved away to India and became a nurse. In India, she met Charles. Neither was aware that the other was a mutant. Amelia played a pivotal role in helping Charles recover from his depression, and the two shared an apartment in Mumbai, then Bombay. Their bond became even stronger when Amelia realized Charles was also a mutant, and not actually making a device to hunt mutants. Yet the two eventually separated because of political differences. Amelia, due to her family's treatment of mutants, thought mutants should stay in hiding, while Charles fought for coexistence with humans. This eventually came to a head when Charles got Scott to start the school for mutants. Amelia tried to leave, and a desperate Charles almost used his powers on her. Due to this, Amelia left. Even then, the two kept crossing paths. While Amelia might have joined the Acolytes out of desperation, despite not liking their ideology, and tried to get the help of the X-Men several times, the two had a friendly reconciliation in X-Men Legacy number 225. Now part of SWORD, Amelia helped Krakoa gain important allies, and also helped heal relationships between Krakoa and Arakko. Charles and Amelia were seen walking away, talking at the end of the issues. Sounds a lot like walking into the sunset, according to us. So, was this the only time the great Professor X made a mistake and misused his powers? No, it happened with another woman whom he also loved. Gabrielle Haller. Gabrielle was a comatose woman who Charles healed using his telepathic powers. The two fell in love, but eventually Gabrielle and Xavier parted ways. He left Israel unaware that Gabby was pregnant. She gave birth to a son, David, who was born with an interesting mutation. He could absorb personalities. When the child developed autism in his later years, a concerned Gabrielle sought the help of another of Charles' potential flames, Moira. Charles and David meet, and Charles helps raise the boy, but eventually, to prevent an alternate timeline, Bishop kills David. Xavier and Gabrielle never got back together, with later writers even adding a bit to their story, which said that Charles used his powers on Gabby, not to hurt or manipulate her, but because he was lonely. If you think dating a patient or using his powers to influence a woman's feelings is creepy and out of character for Professor X, just wait till you read the next entry in this video.
You will learn to control your powers, and when you do, you'll have nothing to fear.
Jean Grey. Yes, the prized pupil. In a comic panel in the 70s, we see Charles admitting to himself that he loved Jean. It was in a thought bubble and everything. He never acted on the attraction or came between Jean and Scott because he recognized the power he held over her as the headmaster of the school. In the 70s, him being wheelchair-bound was another reason. Now, while this was something best left to be forgotten as a relic of the 70s ideology of age gaps, in the comics it was brought back when Onslaught was introduced. Onslaught was basically Magneto's personality fused with the darker aspects of Xavier, and one of the reasons behind his creation was apparently these suppressed feelings. Ew, ew, ew. Jean lost a lot of trust in the professor the day she learned of this. Yet some writers have tried to make it better by showing the professor confessing to Moira that he thought he loved Jean, which many readers have taken as a hint that the emotionally constipated Xavier mistook platonic feelings for romantic ones, until he felt true love when he met Magistrix. This totally retcons Amelia and Gabrielle, but at least it makes the feelings for Jean a little less creepy. Maybe? What do you think? It's still gross. And Jean is not the only student Xavier has loved. He even dated one. Emma Frost. It's Marvel's Earth 1610, and Xavier is leaving his then-girlfriend Mystique. Yes, he dated her in two realities, for Emma Frost, a former student who he has now become romantically involved with. While both are consenting adults with little power imbalance, it can still be weird for some people. Emma, like all of Xavier's lovers, would eventually part ways with him. And yes, it is over political ideologies. Except this is the fun bit. For Emma, Xavier's methods were more extreme. She preferred an even more peaceful group of mutants, and even started a school, which eventually became home to both humans and mutants. To think that Professor X is an extremist to some. And yes, Emma Frost is the mutant who can turn her body into organic diamond. Emma was eventually killed by Madrix's dupes. And there's the end of the list of the top 7 women Charles Xavier has had feelings for. What do you think of it? Marvelous review. Well, we see a more flawed side to the legendary Professor Charles Xavier here, and honestly, at some points, it made us go ew. Like, who manipulates women telepathically, or has feelings for their barely legal students? As much as they humanize Xavier and are products of their time, some of these flaws can be too flawed. Trying to keep your lover from leaving and stopping is respectable, but manipulating someone into a relationship that leads to a child is not, even if we understand loneliness as a motivator, and Charles expressed shame for it. Sure, he might not have used his powers on Gabrielle for the whole relationship, that's not the Professor X we know, but it still leaves a foul taste. And yet, seeing Xavier struggle with the same thing many of us struggle with, loneliness, desperation, and love, shows us a more relatable side of the man who's more myth than anything else. So do these hold a candle to the homoerotic relationship fans think he and Eric share? Which Professor X relationships were a shock to you, and which one has become your new OTP? Which one made you go, no? Let us know in the comments! And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!